nice to be here. I love you all.
Hello and welcome to the Scannain Podcast, your weekly look at the world of film news, Irish and international. I'm your host, Darren Mooney. Joining me are
Jay and Ronan.
And so this week we're going to talk about what we normally do. We're going to talk about the week in film news, the top 10 and the new releases, but we're going to start with what we normally do. So what have you watched since last we talked, Jay?
Quite a bit, actually. So I'll be as quick as I can be. I watched Triple Frontier, the Netflix film.
What a
the
coincidence,
film.
yeah. I also watched it for the second time.
Why is the question I'd ask, but that's a different thing.
You mean you didn't like it?
It's pretty average.
Daddy's camping trip.
Yeah, it's an old-fashioned men on a mission type thing, which is grand. It has the cast for it and everything.
Netflix movie for dads starring daddies.
It really is.
Oh wow.
That's what the internet tells me.
The actors would suggest that Oscar Isaac probably needs a new agent. He's appearing in a lot of dross, and he's starting to be questioned whether he's any good anymore. But
pretty great.
He's yeah.
This is not a film that necessarily showcases range.
No, it doesn't. Charlie Hunnam was the best actor in it, and that's remarkable.
And
Charlie Hunnam.
Charlie Hunnam's introductory scene, and this is a minimum amount of spoiler, but Charlie Hunnam's introductory scene in this, it has him explaining how he ended up with a guy in a chokehold in a cereal aisle local supermarket with a treatise that ends with the line, "That's the price of being a warrior," before Metallica comes on the soundtrack.
No.
It's great.
It's not good. The first hour's decent.
It's actually, it's great fun. It's exactly what you want from a film like this.
It drags the shite out of the second hour, though. I was exhausted at the end of it. But it's not, it's not terrible, but it's not good.
Well, I mean, when we talked about it last week, I described it as the kind of film that you would see getting a theatrical release in the summer in the late 90s.
Shoved out for half the price of a normal blockbuster, so you can make bank on it with a couple of B-movie actor types.
What really surprised me about this, and I think Jay may dispute this, I'm a big fan of J.C. Chandor, and this doesn't seem like the kind of thing he would have gone for in his career. He's done sort of morally complex character pieces. Why has he jumped into this?
Funny you should mention this. It's very much a Chandor grab bag, so to speak. It is his weakest film by a significant margin. I still really liked it, though. But, I mean, it's very much, it's got your men against nature in the style of All Is Lost. It's got your, capitalism sure is bad, isn't it? Like Margin Call, but also, capitalism sure is bad when you wed it to systems of violence, which is also like A Most Violent Year, for example. Yeah. So it's got all of his little interests and themes percolating through. Now, it's a movie. It
does, but it has them in one-line bits. They're not explored.
It's very okay. Well, when you say explored, they're hammered. They're hammered.
I know. But saying stuff doesn't mean it's there. You know what I mean?
Thematic exposition.
Exactly. That's exactly
Nolan's thematic exposition sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, this is very much the.
I can put that in the script. It doesn't mean it's there. Yeah. You know what I mean? In actual terms, it's a
definition,
man on a mission movie, Darren. It's not. That's all it is. That's literally all it is, and not a particularly great one.
It spends a solid. If you were to take every line where the characters talk about how they were trained and how about they use their skills to advance their
That's
own.
That's literally every 80s action film.
I know, but actually articulated repeatedly and consistently.
Yeah, which is why it's over 2 hours long instead of 90 minutes.
Non-stop articulation.
Stop articulating, just do the thing.
Yeah. Stop telling me about how it's only fair that you should use the skills that you were given for your own financial.
I didn't really want to spend this much time on this. It's not good.
I really enjoyed it, but anyway.
I followed up with Easy A, which is much more enjoyable.
Easy A is great.
I've never seen it before.
Really?
No. Jesus.
I haven't seen it, and I really want to.
There are a lot of films. Sometimes you just don't get to see all the films.
I know, and I'm well aware that you guys talk about films that I haven't seen all the time. Okay. It's just odd that it works. Strange that it works the other way around.
Yeah. There's tons I haven't seen.
Good films. I mean, I completely understand if I'm the only one at the table who's seen Under the Silver Lake, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Or Paper Driver 12 times.
Well, 13 but anyway.
Times, yeah.
But I mean, it's when you get to a great film. I
wouldn't go as far as great. It's a good 3.5 star film. I really liked it. Stone is fantastic.
So it got an easy B+.
Indeed. Very good. Actually, that made me laugh more than you're a disgrace movie. But it's a really funny script. It's both literate, semi-literate, all the ways that it should be. It's very smart. Really interesting things about sex and reputation and how people carry themselves and stuff like that. Tricia Clarkson and Stanley Tucci as the parents. My good God,
imagine being
gods
raised by
as
those
parents.
people.
My Lord, and they are hysterical. They tear into the lines they have. They have a blast.
It's amazing. It's written with a deep affection for the kind of movies where these parents would be there. but written so much better than the films that it's
and
very
T.J.
clearly.
Clarkson look like they can't believe they've landed a script with these little parent roles there that's this good.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's very enjoyable. I really liked it. And Stone is perhaps the best she's ever been.
I would not necessarily disagree with that.
I think she's luminous, absolutely luminous.
I mean, I think
really
she's
good.
great in general, but that was
I like her. But in some of the
revelatory
films, I
moment.
can take her leave or depend on the films. But I really like her in this.
Really, it's not your favorite of her role?
It's not, Darren. But let's not get bogged down in that, shall we? Anyway,
Can't really work Birdman or the unexpected virtue of ignorance into a pun.
Don't, because I know you can do it. That's the terrifying part of this. I followed this up with The Bigamist, Ida Lupino's film, which is on Movie, and I missed the Lupino season when the IFI had it. I think as early last year. I was away, which to my absolute shame. And so this is the first one I'd had a chance to see, and it is incredible. It's like she's in the film and she directs it, like, and she's a star in front of the camera and behind it. And it's like this searing drama with a touch of melodrama played as a film noir, and it's remarkable. It's just basically this guy's entitled head viewpoint you get, where he looks at the world in such a way that he can essentially get away with stuff, but there's an empathy there from the direction that really, really adds such a layer to the film. There's understanding in his awfulness, but also a kind of sense of, these things happen. It's not judgmental at all and really empathetic. It's beautifully shot. And the cast are great. Oh, you absolutely adored it. I couldn't believe it was as good as it was.
It really is. It really surprised me when I saw it last year, because the only Lupino I'd seen at that point was the I forgot its name now again, for heaven's sake. The noir that's kind of our most famous one about the guy who takes two people prisoner and makes them drive through the desert.
I haven't seen any of her films. This is the first one.
Oh, wow.
And it certainly won't be the last.
This is my favourite of hers, but when I saw it last year, I was really struck by the only thing I can think that's similar in terms of, like you say, the depth of its empathy in a really complex situation that at the time of production was really easy to judge, is Brief Encounter. It does that sort of thing of not in any way judging what many people would at the time.
I think the original Mildred Pierce does as well, which I really liked about it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but I agree. You don't get that. Yeah. And Lupino's, her eye is
it's so complex and beautifully directed, and she throws in a great performance herself.
Spoiler, I believe interruption. The Ida Lupino film you might have been
crazy
was The Hitchhiker? Oh,
yeah.
Hitchhiker. Yeah, that's the one.
I've heard great things. But
Hitchhiker is very good. I saw it for a second time as part of that season and realised I was very wrong the first time because I hadn't liked it too much.
And the thing of as well, some of her films are on YouTube as well, which I've discovered, so I'm going to get to them, because I don't think there's a box set available.
She's really great, and the most prolific female director of her time in Hollywood, certainly.
Yeah, no, great. Another one I saw, and I didn't get to IFI to see it, and The Ballroom Romance, it was shown the IFI last Saturday afternoon, which was a tricky time in a lot of ways. Your Monday, Tuesday, 6:30s are much more convenient for me. Like, weekends are a bit trickier to get to these things. But I watched a VHS upload on YouTube, and the VHS upload is okay, because if you grew up with VHS as I did, you get those occasional tracking lines and stuff in that, right?
Used to the judders.
You do, and it's actually almost a throwback, and it actually, to some degree, worked really well.
I feel like we might even have to explain what VHS is for some of our younger listeners.
It's big tapes, big giant tapes. What are tapes? I don't fucking know. But this is so I kind of, because it's a 1982 film, it kind of works weirdly well for it, even though it's set from before that. But The Ballroom Romance is 52 minutes long, and it is exceptional. It's one of those rare kind of films I've heard from before from few people that it's great, and it's one of those things I had to record from TG4 on one of those TV boxes from a few years ago, and then it crashed and died, and all the recordings went, and it lost it. So I get to watch it, and I should have watched it. Brenda Fricker, who's this kind of not a young woman anymore, but a slightly older woman that's still looking to find a husband. Her dad's ailing on the farm, and she wants to find a husband to take over the farm, and so they can kind of work. And you see her working in the farm, her dad, who's kind of a little infirm at the start of it. And then The Ballroom Romance is this kind of the weekly, you come in, there's lads on one side, women on the other side, that kind of country style kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's a band in the corner, And it's this kind of thing where she's...
Is it Brooklyn?
Yeah. This is another level entirely in terms of script, which is unreal in terms of subtlety. Conversations that are purportedly about one thing, but really about another, underlying deep feelings and asking questions. Really dense, clever stuff, but on the surface, kind of just straightforward conversation. The only conversation you could have, 'cause you couldn't have conversations back then about explicit kind of conversations about kind of relationships and stuff like that. It was very much kind of broader, but Fricker is exceptional, and they have this kind of thing about, you know, the loneliness of something and the spinsterhood or whatever that's hanging over people, and also the emigration aspect of the country, which was all men have gone to England. You know, there's an announcement that Johnny such and such got married in London, or somebody else got married in Chicago. So, you know, men are leaving.
Extremely pronounced in the early 80s.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. Beautiful, bleak, extremely melancholy, quite funny on occasion. Has the various Irish faces that you think. Mick Lally pops up, Cyril Cusack, the usual kind of faces you'd kind of expect. It's absolutely glorious, and it should be one of those kind of Criterion level things in Ireland. But
we don't have.
I'm not kind of ranting. But it's extraordinarily frustrating that we can't just buy the goddamn thing.
It's incredibly frustrating that it's only available as the VHS sort of rip on YouTube or on that release that you can't get to.
Extremely occasional IFI screening. I wasn't able to make it either, and I'm absolutely crestfallen, especially hearing how great it is.
VHS, because great movies will transcend the watching one, and it does. It absolutely does.
And I mean, on the evidence we have, it might be another 5 years before we get the chance to see it again.
Yeah.
And again, like, this is not to disparage the institutions responsible.
No, who are at least showing it.
There should be money for things like this.
There's definitely
like, I mean,
I've
ranted about this before. I've talked a lot about it before. It's incredibly frustrating. We have an IFI player that shows the kind of ads and older kind of short films, which is great and fantastic. But we're so close to, why don't we just get the goddamn films on it so we can pay for them and watch them? Because I want to watch them. And it's it. Anyway, I'm not.
The archives are large. I imagine the rights issues are.
I know, but I mean, they're sitting there doing nothing.
No, of course. But what hope is there for a sort of awareness of the cultural history of Ireland if we haven't seen these films? Because we're people who trawl through these things.
Yeah, anybody who knows anything, even the broadest about Irish film, thinks it started with My Left Foot. And I liked My Left Foot, but it didn't. I mean, film went before that, and it's incredibly strange to see, because there's probably 5 or 6 films that I've never seen that are probably incredible.
Classics, yeah.
Because you stumble upon something like this, Ball Romance, and myself and Ron have talked about pigs before, like films that you just kind of stumble upon and realize
things like Hush by Baby that we saw.
Yes, exactly. In the IFI, God bless, and the IFI do great work.
They do,
and so I'm not criticising them, but it's just the fact that they're almost there tangibly. And I can't get them. It's But anyway, I'm not going to stop. But I
understand and agree. I entirely agree completely.
But come back to a film Darren is a big fan of, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which I watched at the weekend.
Late.
I really liked it. It's a really, really smart script, really funny script, great voice work, and animation styles are incredible and mesh unbelievably well together.
Yes,
considering you wouldn't think that would be the case.
They are.
Yeah, and the script, the knowing kind of thing, and you've referenced more about the kind of, we'll just do this one more time. 30 seconds later, you know everything, or 10 seconds later, you know everything. And that kind of stuff works really well. Couple of drawbacks for me, just a touch too long maybe. I could have shaved it 20 minutes off, and the last act gets a bit actiony to the point of it almost feels like a Marvel film, actually.
Jay.
But just listen.
Hey,
but
why are you dead inside?
I know that. I really liked it.
I'm kidding.
My niece adored it. Absolutely adored it.
It is, and I would argue in defense of that closing act. That closing act is amazing.
It's well structured, but I got a bit tired.
Spider-Man fighting across infinite New Yorks.
It just I got a bit tired.
New York ever compiled on top of one another, and it's skyscrapers. A world literally built of skyscrapers. There's a globe made of skyscrapers.
I do need a nap even hearing that.
It's loud and it's big.
Well, of course, Darren loves it.
There's a lot. But my niece asked me before we started watching it, is there a Spider-Girl in it?
Oh, that's what really matters.
There's Spider-Man. So she's delighted. And it really does. It really absolutely matters. And she loved it. So we were delighted with that. I have another one in top 10. I have another one in new release, so I'll skip that.
Oh, you've been busy.
And I'll be very quick then on the other ones. Where the hell is my other Varda gone? Sorry, these are the questions, right?
I love that you don't. Jay hasn't reached the end of a segment before we've talked about at least one Varda.
Absolutely not.
I know.
Where's my Varda? I've lost me Varda.
Where's my Varda?
I've literally lost the Varda.
So
one of my Vardas are missing.
Oh.
Right,
Varda 54, where are you?
I don't think I've actually put one in. But
come on.
Right, I watched 2 Vardas this week, right? One, two I want to talk about, but one I'll mention that I finished watching today, which is Jane B by Agnes V, which is the Agnes Varda's documentary on Jane Birkin, who's an English actress and who ended up starring and doing a lot of French and acting and theatre work. She lived in France. She speaks French. And so it was this kind of weird little documentary that she did on her, I think it was late 80s, 88, I think. And it's there's a reason why the Varda season happened in the IFI last year and kind of toured around England and stuff like that. Had about 6 or 7 or 8 Varda films that were the kind of greatest hits, if you will, right? The kind of the standard bearers and the kind of ones that'd be a bit more kind of broader for people to kind of get into.
Accessible, yeah.
Having watched this and a few others over the last few months, I can understand why they did that. And that's not to disparage this. What I mean by that is, if I saw this first, as my kind of introduction to Varda, I'd be like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
But having seen all the films I've seen of her, and I've seen her at 16 now, I think 17, I can understand exactly what's going on here, because she digs into stuff in a very particular way. And in this one, there's this kind of thing, like, it's like, here's my subject. Now I want you to really look on my subject. And looking is a really interesting thing with Varda, because cameras, mirrors, the movement of the cameras and stuff that she's really obsessed with. And there's this astonishing camera move in the film, which kind of somebody looking into a mirror, Jane Birkin looking into a mirror, and the camera moves around, and you see the camera in the reverse, and then it comes around this side, and the camera's gone, but her face kind of changes. It's really, really good. It's nearly the start of the film, and I like, holy shit! In the way that you can with her.
It sounds a lot like that shot in Cleo where we literally turn to each other.
Yes.
We're like, what just
hang
happened?
on, that's it was like a match shot, but it wasn't. It was an actual thing. Yeah. It's extremely playful. Occasionally risque. There's this kind of thing where they do little kind of mini short films, little vignettes in the film that kind of goes from documentary to drama and vice versa and stuff like that. And Jane Birkin talks about, playing iconic roles, like, and a lot of them are kind of Jane related. So it's almost like punning there, and you like Calamity Jane and almost Jane of Arc in that regard, and Tarzan and Jane. Like, so the Joan of Arc's quite playful. So she wouldn't get to play it really, because although she speaks French, the English accent, there's this kind of stateless thing going on of, I'm not really English anymore, I'm not really French either, but and kind of not quite accepted on either side. And you see little shots of Charlotte Gainsbourg, who's her daughter, so you see her as a kind of teenager and stuff like that in it, which is quite nice. And there's this weird kind of, because the documentary exists in the space between the two collaborators, it's Varda and Birkin, and it's kind of what they come up with between them, because Varda appears in the documentary, like, okay, what we do next? Well, we don't have the budget for that kind of thing. Like, it's really weird. It's almost the documentary being built within its own kind of thing, which I really like. I'm unsure as to what it all means, and if it means anything at all. And perhaps
does
that's
it
the
have
point.
to?
No, that's exactly it. But I'm not sure how much there is to it, even though we enjoyed every minute of watching it.
If you enjoyed every minute of it, surely that's enough for it to...
It is. No, it is. It is like, I'm not being disparaging.
Darren Varda defender right here.
I'm not disagreeing, and I'm not complaining about it. It just, compared to what I've seen before of her, it's a lighter kind of touch, and that's no bad thing. And I really enjoyed it. But it's just, I was maybe expecting a little bit more, but I don't know. But it's still really well worth watching. It's fascinating. And the other one I watched, because I found it, and I didn't add it to my letterbox, so I still another one to add, but I found it, which is The Young Girls at 25, which is the documentary about Jacques Demy's film, The Young Girls of Rochefort, which he made in, I think, 68 or 67. And this is purportedly a documentary by Varda on the 25th anniversary of it in the town. Everybody comes back, Catherine Deneuve and various other people pop around the town, and then they all talk about how much of a big deal the film was for him to be there and kind of spend all the time. And she talks to people that remember it when it was in there, shopkeepers, old women sitting in the corner, that kind of stuff. And then there's footage from when she kind of filmed around when the film was being made, so you get the older footage and the new footage kind of come together. But what it really is about, and I'd kind of done a lot of reading on it last week, Varda post Demi's death, he died in, I think, 91, 92. She made 4 films in response to his death, essentially, up to the point where I think her last film before Faces Places, which was The Beast of Agnes, which is the last one to explore this, there's basically 4 films dealing with grief, essentially, and their grief at the loss, and this is one of them. And there's 3 more, which I'm going to get to very soon. And this is an exploration of that kind of memory and grief, because she's looking at him through the camera and through the footage. So, there are people are talking about him. The absence of him is in the modern footage, but he's very much present in the footage that you see from when she was there filming when she's younger. And aging is always a thing, and Varda thing is she's big kind of looking at that. There's one shot that from the time when they were making the film where she makes a kind of point. She says something. I could paraphrase, but it's best not to. If you haven't seen it, I'd rather not say it. But he's putting on a jumper, a sweatshirt, and she says something before it, and the way he puts it on and the words that come before it is devastatingly beautiful and really, really affectionate in the way that she can be, and moving, and it's just one tiny little shot that lasts about 30-40 seconds in the film. It's really wonderful. I absolutely loved it. Without again, not really doing much except kind of Varda looking back on her career, looking back on herself, looking back on age, looking back on time, which is massive preoccupations for her. Really, really interesting, and I'm looking forward to get to the rest of the films in that era, which is the kind of early to late 90s, I think. Very, very good. And I'll finish with I've loads. Sorry, I'll 3 more and I'll be really quick. Right, sorry, Capernaum.
Yes.
This is excellent. Ronan recommended to me, and he was right. It's really beautiful, hysterically funny, absolutely heartbreaking, unbelievably moving at times, really distressing at times. There's beautiful roving camera. Those 2 kids, I honestly haven't seen 2 better child performances, and I don't know how long. And Ron kind of commented on a kind of double act, and it, for the ages of physical, it's like Lauren and Hardy kind of esque territory at some point in the middle of it, where I actually almost burst out laughing like really loudly in the cinema, and there's little gestures and looks, and oh my god, I would die for those kids. They're amazing.
It's one of those rare films that it's so good at creating a sense of its characters as characters that you believe in, that you're almost shouting at the cinema saying, I don't want this to happen.
At a certain point, I get to about half hour from the end, it's like, if anybody dies, I'm going to fucking go berserk at the end of this. And that's a kind of rare one for me. But I really like it's in my top 3 here. It's great. I mentioned, because it's disappeared out of top 10, The Hole in the Ground, which I caught eventually. Me and 7 others in the cinema, which is indicative of drifting out of the top 10, alas. I really liked it.
It's a whole load of fun.
Yeah, it is. That absolutely is. It's. I mean, once you see the hole, you know exactly what's going to happen. 90 minutes later,
the premise is in the title.
You know, but I mean, you know exactly how it's going to be.
Hole.
Yeah. Indeed, Aaron. Indeed.
Careful now.
Steady on. Chekhov will not take that kind of slander.
Yeah.
But its first hour is great. There's a kind of sustained dread and real restraint in the filmmaking, and those 2 really great performances by Kerslake and Mackie that really, really add up to a lot. And the kid has a lot of work to do, because there's a kind of switcheroo in terms of personality and whatever that requires not too much of a difference, but just enough difference to unsettle stuff. It is, and it's really, really well performed.
Puts a lot of the weight on him to be
unsettling.
And he does it
Kerslake's very
well.
good, and she can do that kind of stuff really well, but it's a lot of pressure on a small child to do it, and he carries it admirably. Sound design is great. The cast great. Kind of familiar kind of final act to some degree, but I wouldn't hold it too much against it, you know.
I appreciate the final act, if only because A, it followed the film's premise to its conclusion, and B, it worked enough as a bit of like making sense within the context of, and I love this, Chekhov's Hole. It also felt that it was a sharp enough divide from what came before in terms of tone and theme, in that the film kind of starts out almost as psychological horror and develops in interesting directions that I was happy that it didn't stay purely in the realm of psychological horror. I mean, we've talked about this before, where it's a blending of like 3 different styles of horror, and I like the fact that it's a blending, because it means that doing those well is enough of itself, rather than having to do one of them spectacularly.
I like a psychological horror, so I was happier when it was in that spot.
But
I could take the point.
But
I like all horror.
In moving from one to the next, it always manages to maintain its own sort of sense of internal logic. And it also commendable, because a lot of them will jump into another sort of subgenre
and it'll feel like a sharp lose it. Whereas this feels organic but also distinct. Which is...
I would add as well, and this will come up later. It does a thing where it resists doing a thing where it could easily have done a thing.
I wonder what you could possibly be talking about. What other film in a similar genre?
We will talk later, Darren.
Possibly coming up this
week.
And
very finally and very quickly, I saw Maiden.
Don't leave us in suspense.
In the IFI, because I missed it. I missed Capernaum on Wednesday accidentally, because the bus was an arse. But so I just stumbled at the IFI. I was like, what's on next? Maiden was on next. What's the thing? And I really liked it. It's a solid documentary about a team that.
The audience award winner at this year's.
Yes, and I can absolutely see why. I mean, it's an audience crowd pleaser. It's about an all-women team who entered the Whipwreck Cup, the sailing competition, in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I think it was 89, 90s.
It was 89, I believe.
Really interesting. The first shot, literally the first shot in the film, which I really liked, was the captain of the one who put the team together. It's a kind of old 80s stock footage kind of looking for where she's standing at the boat to do a little advertisement for the team. And the photographer's like, could you smile, love? You know, and it's a perfect kind of encapsulation of how women were treated, particularly around sport at that time, and still are.
And still are, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so how do you get time? Who minds your children? Where literally nobody asks guys that in sport, like ever. But anyway, so it's a lot of that going on. They're really good. The women are fantastic. They're talking head, standard talking head stuff, but they're really interesting talking heads and they're funny and whatever. And it made me kind of, A, it was a kind of a nice emotional ending, which I really liked. But B, it made me care about the positioning of where somebody's going to finish in a sport that I absolutely detest, which is sailing. Like, it's the richest, widest, awful sport there is in the world, even compared to, like, golf.
Well,
it's
look,
awful,
whatever
awful.
floats your boat.
Yes, indeed. So, like, if I'm caring about somewhere finishing that, you're documentary doing something right.
Yeah, quite a sea change for
what
yourself.
Stop it, Darren. Jesus, wet.
Sorry.
Anyway,
I think listeners should be advised that he does not actually have a written down list of these.
You know, he doesn't. He literally
Just
thinks them
notching
up
them
on the
up.
spot.
That was actually impressive,
Thank you.
requiring some knowledge of the subject.
Anyway, sorry.
Winch me to safety. Go on. I'm
Whoa!
done.
Oh, all right then. So sorry,
I
that let the
lit-
wind out of my sails. Ronan, what have you watched this
God.
week?
I know nothing about sailing. I'm very much on sort of Jay Light turf this week. As is often the case, he'll watch something on Mubi and I'll follow along the day before it expires. So I have followed suit and watched his last week's Varda, Lion's Love, which I think I liked more.
I think you did like more than I did.
Yeah, I'm sort of, it's interesting what you said earlier about the other film, that if it had been your first exposure, you would have sort of been like, what the hell is going on here? Very much this here too. It's sort of got a sketch-based structure.
You need
where,
primer for it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of long scenes of these hippies just laughing with each other, talking about nothing in particular, but it's one of those things where in talking about nothing, they talk about everything, which sounds very up itself, but with Varda never is. It's very down-to-earth and very, very funny. This was released in 1969 and it was just after she'd moved to Hollywood with Demi, and it has that real sense of an outsider making a better film about a culture than an insider ever could. It's, looking in from the outside always gives you a better perspective. In this case, she does some really fascinating stuff. It kind of reminded me in a way of Nashville, about the convergence of popular entertainment and politics and how they're starting to influence each other. Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of great head-on shots of what the characters are watching on television. Stuff like the Kennedy assassination, Martin Luther King, and how that folds back into their world, which seems utterly inconsequential. But it feels
on the horizon, isn't it?
It feels in a way prescient about how these things shaped people who were sort of trudging through days that all bled into one. I think it's really, really good at capturing that sense. Very, very funny throughout, and always with Varda's self-reflexivity. There's that whole aspect you mentioned about, interviewing the other filmmaker, but catching herself in the mirror at times. And it's got these very subtle takes on what it is to be a woman in Hollywood.
With Shirley Clark, meetings for a Hollywood film.
It's really terrific, and I kind of found it sort of slyly radical that this all felt at times messy, but at the same time was saying something quite pointed about the way America works.
Yeah, I think you're right about the messiness, but the messiness feels deliberate to me in the sense of this sketchy outsider kind of drifts around, non-threatening kind of thing, but also getting it and getting right to the heart of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Understanding things. And speaking of diving deep into America, at Jay's urging, after months and months of urging, gotta be fair, I watched Foxcatcher, which I liked less than you, but still like quite a bit. I think it's at times really going loud on talking about America. There's a bit early on where Channing Tatum's character is being flown to meet Steve Carell's, who is the wrestling manager who is going to sort of help him take on the World Championship in the Olympics. And the pilot, or somebody who's in the helicopter with him, turns and went, "That's Valley Forge below you." And I was like, "You're signposting themes." But
It can be done well.
It can be done well, and it is done pretty well here. This happens early enough on that I panicked, but it levels out very quickly. It's one of those things where it's like, this is what we're going to talk about in this presentation.
But it gets much, much better from there on. And it does, address these ideas of how America is founded on ideas of class and masculinity. It gets to that very, very well. Tatum's performance is incredible, and it's
revelatory. Well, I love Magic Mike and that sort of stuff as well, but it is amazing.
He's been terrific in many things with Soderbergh, and elsewhere. He's always great, and it's no surprise to me that he's the one of the primary cast who didn't get nominated here, because it's the subtlest work. I think. There's something almost preening about Carell. He's doing that thing where he's like, and he's
he's got the makeup, and
it absolutely is. It's a performative character, and it's a good performance of performativity. It is somebody who's projecting themselves into the room by literally sticking their chin up and making sure everybody sees them walk into the room, and then when somebody who is important to them walks into the room, performing.
That's why I like the battering of that kind of thing, because it's big, because that's how America sees itself. That kind of way.
Absolutely. Miller is really good director. I haven't seen Moneyball.
I like Moneyball a lot, but
I've seen Capote previously.
I'm particularly prone to Sorkin scripts.
I like Moneyball a lot.
Despite my issues with Sorkin.
He's 3 for 3 for me. I think he's a really interesting director.
No, this is really, from a directorial perspective, it's really impressive. The way that he... it's chilly. And he really gets at stuff quite subtly. Which is in direct contrast to what I worried about at the start. There is a little bit of that prevails through it, and I sort of at times felt the lack of something more incisive. I've not that it was lacking a grand statement, but that I didn't come out of it thinking, wow, you've made me look at this in a new way. Maybe it was just sort of confirmation bias. This is sort of perspective I already have. But really impressed by a lot of it.
By the way, this is worth noting in terms of, because I think we talked about Bennett Miller before. He has nothing on his slate as far as IMDb is concerned, apart from a remake of A Christmas Carol. Yeah, that is undated.
A remake of A Christmas Carol. Interesting.
Which is interesting again, given his filmography and how well it's regarded as well. He did also direct the short Nespresso, George Who. So he is pretty much to blame for the current range of George Clooney's Nespresso. They keep developing. It's like, now he's dragged an ensemble into it as well. There's more than one Natalie Dormer one.
Really?
Yeah. I thought it was just one, and then it was different, but it was not good.
It does feel like one.
Yeah.
I feel like one very long one.
But aren't we all living in a George Clooney Nespresso ad?
Yes. And then, following my little dalliance a couple of weeks back with Jonas Max's ridiculously long 5-hour film that was amazing and will almost certainly be the best thing I see all year, Mubi had his first film, Guns of the Trees, from 1961. This is actually a fiction film. He's much better known as a sort of documentarian, or it's best to say non-fiction. He sort of, spans a sort of strange range that's never quite just documentary. There's a lot of diarist sort of stuff there. This is absolutely fascinating. It is kind of partially a city symphony in the old silent movie style. It's a love story that really reminded me at times of If Beale Street Could Talk. It's got that sense of getting caught up in the romance of the city itself and falling in love with someone in the midst of that, and having these tragic undertones, but always making it through those on the sort of the force of the love you feel. And it's also this weird horror of interiority where you keep cutting back to the sense of frustration and dissatisfaction with the modern world. It's not entirely successful. Given that it's a first-time filmmaker, it's quite exceptional. But there are moments where Allen Ginsberg reads his own poems over some of Max's imagery that doesn't quite gel. It feels, like it's kind of hitting home the idea of being disconnected with the world too much. But it's really, really wonderful. And there's a sort of short tribute retrospective on Mubi at the moment, and I'll be lapping all of these up. This is, as debuts go, it's really, really incredible. And I'll finish up then with something also very, very strange. A Chris Marker film, Theory of Sets. This is a short from 91. Made entirely with a weird computer graphic simulator type thing that looks a lot like the graphics you get in an old Nintendo Entertainment System RPG. It's really odd. And it's not enough for Chris Marker, of course, that it looks weird. He also has to do something weird with it. So this is basically an explainer on set theory in mathematics for children through the medium of Noah's Ark.
Ooh.
It's bonkers.
It's a great pitch.
It is. It's a great elevator pitch. 15 minutes long, and is pretty much really, really odd. It's got a very eerie score that sort of amps up and makes you feel strangely uneasy, because at the same time, a lot of his sort of cuts between these weird graphics and on-screen text are very funny. It's a very weird tonal imbalance that's obviously quite deliberate, and yeah, very, very interesting. I like Marker a lot. I haven't seen too many of his stuff, and this is wildly different to anything I've seen by him or by anyone, to be honest.
As well, I've seen Sansalei and Legit, and there's one I saw in college a few years ago, which is really interesting, called The Last Bolshevik, which is about a Russian filmmaker called Medvedkin, I think. And it's like a couple of hours long and really interesting. Like it's the political kind of things as well. I think it was made in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Like, it's really good. And I was saying, and a lot of them aren't available, unfortunately, which is certainly a problem. Like, you can get box sets in France, like, you can get box sets in part in France, like, with the full kind of thing. But
you don't even know they've got subtitles.
You don't even know. So it's a tricky one thing. Beyond that, it's difficult to get. And these are the kind of filmmakers I'd love to get a box set.
Yeah, it's exactly the situation with Theory of Sets. It's on Mubi in, I think, Canada or something like that. And otherwise, very, very difficult to track down. So
it's not just Irish films, which is... Yeah.
It's 50 minutes and just
50
wild and weird.
15.
Oh, I'm on it.
Yeah, just short.
You've got Noah excuse.
Thank
you.
It is better than Noah. And I like Noah a lot.
I like Noah a lot as well.
Noah is mental.
It is. It shouldn't even exist.
It
shouldn't
believe. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, like, whatever about Paramount's current troubles, the fact that they greenlit Noah.
I remember sitting in the 2D IMAX in Parnell Street watching that. It might have been press screen. And I was sitting there, I was like, it's only at 10 a.m, half 10. What the fuck is this? And I didn't really read anything.
How did they make this?
Who would give somebody 150 million or whatever it costs to do this?
It's like, who looks at the script and says, "Yep, this is our early summer block. We're going to kick up the summer block."
The rock giants will really get those fundamental Christians in.
I was about an hour and a half in. I think to myself, Russell Crowe's going to kill these children. I was absolutely convinced of it. I still am, even on rewatch. I still think he's going to do it. It's remarkable. It's a remarkable.
I think we all really like Noah.
What a world.
But yeah, so
I
had a bit of a lighter week. I've watched some stuff that's already been covered. So, for example, I watched Triple Frontier. That played very well in the Mooney family movie night.
Did you like it?
Weekend.
I would have slapped you if it had been your family dinner. But anyway,
there's still time.
It's a broad, crowd-pleasing movie.
It is. No, it is broad.
It gives you
exactly
what you expect from it, which is grand. And I mean, again, this is the idea of Netflix as home for things that no longer have space in cinemas.
I agree. In that regard, you're right. You're absolutely
and I have a fondness for those sorts of movies, so I'm willing to accept.
I do. I just like better ones.
I also rewatched Twin Peaks: The Return again this week, but I'm not going to get into that. Yeah, I know. We'll get to that in a moment. And Fire Walk with Me, which again I'll probably be talking about another point, but Fire Walk with Me is amazing.
It's an incredible film. Ronan, I know you tried the Twin Peaks show and it didn't quite work for you. Fire Walk with Me exists and can exist as a standalone film.
To a certain extent. The first 25 minutes may be a bit much for you, but if you're not on the train.
Yeah, you could read up a little bit beforehand if you wanted it, but Fire Walk With Me is as good a standalone film as Lynch has made, and it's incredible.
It's staggering. It's aged phenomenally well. It was famously booed at Cannes.
With no received at the time.
Yeah, no lesser than Quentin Tarantino declaring that he would not watch a David Lynch film until he had heard from a source that he trusted that Lynch had emerged from his own asshole. Good old Quentin Tarantino.
Rich from Quentin.
I know, right?
The man that spent the last decade in his own arsehole.
All right, but anyway. So no, I rewatched Fire Walk With Me, and it's amazing, and it's got that whole thing that Lynch does, where you got the weird contrast between the kind of hokey, weird kind of
folksy kind of thing.
Yeah, campy almost to a certain extent.
And soap opera.
An unashamedly soap opera. I mean, there's the great.
you see soap opera in Twin Peaks.
With Peyton Place and stuff like that. The influence there. Like, I mean, there's a great quote from The Guardian in 2014 when Lynch was interviewed. It's like, "Were you parodying soap operas?" Like, no,
I was doing soap opera. Yeah, exactly. But he takes it very seriously, like in that regard. He does.
But the thing with Fire Walk With Me is it does that, and then it lands this incredible right hook because it's
man, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just anyway.
You're right to watch this.
You do. I like, even if you weren't going to watch the show, find time for it. The film is exceptional.
And then I rewatched Deadpool 2. Somehow I've seen this 6 times since it was released last year.
You're going to regret this in life.
Me. And somehow I still haven't watched Once Upon a Deadpool. which is like on the
I'm
list
gonna,
of things
Darren,
I
I
have
will
to
throw
watch.
my glasses at you. No, I won't, because I can't see anything.
I still have to watch Once Upon a Deadpool.
No, you don't.
It's on the list of things I have to watch. This is interesting because that was Jay throwing his glasses.
He's very upset.
He is very. You've never seen him very upset.
Yeah,
But yeah, one of the things that I watched, and this is interesting because I mean, you guys have been talking about how great movie is and how you love all the stuff you find.
Oh, I'm
on
afraid
movie.
it is. I'm going to be
I
sandbagged
see
here.
where
And
this
I
is
was
going.
And I was like, hey, I gotta get some of this sweet movie action.
No.
It's like, I feel like
What did
Jay
you
and Ronan,
watch?
who are coming in every day, every
Banging
week
on
this podcast,
about Vardas for years.
I'm
Every
so
week they're like,
afraid it
I've
is.
caught this thing on movie.
Oh, you know.
It's amazing. You should sign up. You should try it. It's going to be great. And I was like, I'm going to come in this Thursday and we're going to have a conversation. And myself, Jay, and Ronan will have seen this thing because it's on Mubi. And it's one of the biggest releases of the week on Mubi.
I hate you for this.
Oh, yeah.
And it was Under the Silver Lake, ladies and gentlemen.
Which neither of us
which
have got
was
to.
David Robert Mitchell's 2-hour and 20-minute follow-up to It Follows, starring Andrew Garfield in this sort of like LA noir pastiche parody thing that's not very good. Yeah. I can't...
The 2 hour 20 minutes is what put me off watching it, quite
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah, it's a commitment, and it feels 2 hours.
Yeah,
and
no,
20
it's
minutes.
as well.
What put me off watching it is that it's still got 4 weeks till it expires.
Well, indeed,
So-
Ronan.
Ronan will get
I will,
to it.
I will do it
see you
the day
in April.
before.
Ronan's watch will cut off midway through when they remove it from the service.
They don't do that.
They don't do that. You go by midnight. Once you start before midnight.
But yeah, I mean, like again, this is, and the thing is, right? I like this more than a lot of the people who have been talking about this, while still acknowledging it's not very good and I didn't really enjoy it. It's the kind of movie when you're watching it, you can feel that there's going to be an entire generation of young men explaining to an entire generation of young women
Yeah.
that they, quote, just
Just
don't get it.
Yeah.
Unquote. And it's...
The new Fight Club.
No.
And that's not even the blame for Fight Club, but you know what I'm getting at.
I know, and I mean, like, and Fincher's quote on Fight Club's great, which is like, if your daughter's boyfriend told you his favorite movie was Fight Club, I'd tell her to stop dating him immediately.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's also like, the film has some good ideas and some good scenes in that, but they're too spaced out. And its good ideas are kernels rather than fully developed ideas themselves. I mean, you pointed to Triple Frontier, and you pointed out quite rightly that it doesn't necessarily dig underneath the surface of the military-industrial complex as a representation of modern American
It
capitalism.
certainly does not.
Yes. Whereas this, on the other hand, this is like somehow shallower than, somehow
Yeah.
shallower than Triple Frontier, despite taking itself much, much, much more seriously.
Wow.
There is
How is that possible?
there is far too much masturbation in this movie, both literal and figuratively, which is stunning.
Now we want to watch it. There
it's-
you got me.
It's like it's very. There's this weird thing where it's at once committed to portraying the scuzziness of its lead character, who is Sam, played by Andrew Garfield. And Andrew Garfield, like, you feel sorry for him because he's committing to this. It's like Garfield is all
This
in.
is going to be that film.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
this is going to be the big break.
Yeah,
It's going
yeah.
to be like, and I mean, Garfield's again, it's not a flattering performance, so you're kind of like, I admire you doing this.
And he's a good actor,
He's
Garfield.
he's a very good actor. He's got a lot of charm.
Yeah.
The issue is that Sam is just, he's pathologically unlikable as protagonist, and the film seems to like zig and zag as to how much contempt / pity you are meant to hold on him for a given moment. Like, on the one hand, he's portrayed as unnecessarily violent, voyeuristic, sex obsessed, bit of an idiot, completely lost, possibly like psychologically non-functional, and unobsessed with the women around him in a way that is incredibly creepy. And the film seems to acknowledge this. And then there are the moments when it portrays him as like the stock insert character that you've seen in every like young male Los Angeles film director's movie, which is like, I've thought really hard about these things and I have some opinions I'd like to give. And it's very much like, there's a great movie to be made here where it digs into this idea of using conspiracy theory as a way of explaining contemporary society.
Yeah.
And again, we're living in a society where stuff like Pizzagate, where stuff like birtherism is explaining like how damaging and how sort of far-reaching conspiracy theory is in modern culture. The only issue is that like Under the Silver Lake never really engages with any of that substance. It's just like, hey, conspiracy culture is kind of fun and weird, isn't it? It's like, yeah, it's...
That's not really doing anything, is it?
No, it isn't. And I mean, there are moments where it's like, moments where characters seem to offer like grand philosophical statements that are really just incredibly obvious and have been made by movies that are far shorter and more concise and more intuitive about how they approach it. There's a moment where Topher Grace, as Sam's best friend, explains that the reason why people like conspiracy theories is because they crave mystery in an age where it no longer exists. You know, there's another moment where a supporting character explains, with a montage that goes on far too long and seems far too convinced of its own profundity, that advertising companies, I want you to wait for this. I want you guys to prepare yourself for this, because it's a big moment. This is worthy of like a sting on the soundtrack, a couple of quick cuts, some camera zooms in on the material that supports this hypothesis. But what if advertising companies use sexual imagery in order to make you buy products? Have you thought about that?
Hang on,
Which ones?
Have you thought about this?
Did he give us a list?
Yeah, like women eating sandwiches that are like phallic. Shots of women positioned between men's legs. I mean, this is just the movie treats this sort of stuff
and you can see 19-year-old guys talking about this like they've just discovered
like they've just discovered it. And I mean, like, and again, there are some good moments in there. There's a wonderfully macabre moment with the character playing on a piano, talking about, like, and again, this is a very simple idea, but it's done with more flair than the rest of the movie, where a character who's playing all these hits that he wrote, including stuff like Smells Like Teen Spirit and Radiohead's Creep, and he's talking about how, you know, the irony of, like, youth rebellion as something that's been, like, capitalized and sort of, like, commodified and sold and packaged for consumption, and how, like, everything, you know, that young men do in order to rebel is something that's been sold to them. And it's, you know, it's like, it's not the most complex idea, but it's an interesting one.
It's something, at least.
And it's handled relatively well, because the scene is, like, weird in a way that is interesting and uncomfortable. The rest of the film doesn't manage that. It manages to be weird and uncomfortable, but not interesting.
What it sounds like to me is like this kind of thing where you get that kind of success and you just pull out any old screenplay to make a second film.
I honestly...
Like other films this week.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about that later.
Sorry.
But yeah.
I call it Seven Psychopath Syndrome.
That's a dreadful film.
It's a dreadful film. So,
I don't...
Martin, have you got any other scripts? Well, I've got this shithouse thing that nobody would make. We can rush this into production.
I don't mind Seven Psychopaths.
It's not
I don't
good.
love it.
It's not good in any way, shape, or form.
All right.
You know that thing about a script in the bottom of your drawer?
Yeah.
That was one in the bottom of the bin. Dreadful. Dreadful.
And then finally, before we move on to talk about the week in film news, because it happened to be on at the weekend, I rewatched Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, which is a fascinating movie to rewatch. It was produced as a movie about the end of history. Nicholas Meyer returning from having directed Star Trek II.
Okay.
And it's very much, it's a metaphor for the end of the Cold War, the idea of like the collapse of the enemy and what that means in terms of American self-identity, here embodied obviously by Kirk as the cowboy on the frontier, and the Federation, Star Trek as an extrapolation of contemporary American society into a distant future. And it does a lot of interesting stuff in that, and it's kind of fun to watch as a historical document there. And there's actual discussions, again, theme is dialogue, but where they're talking about stuff like the end of history, or how does history get past people like me, and all this sort of stuff, which is absolutely fascinating. And again, if you want to be a Star Trek fan in the context of like handing it over to a new generation, there's something very touching in the final moments of the film where Kirk, who has always said where no man has gone before, catches himself in his final log entry and says where no one has gone before. Acknowledging that, you know, the future doesn't necessarily belong to him. Which is quite, like, it's heartening, and it's incredibly sweet.
It's only as we've moved on since then.
Well, that's the thing, is that watching it now, it seems like the movie has aged both very well and in a way that was entirely unforeseen. It's a movie about the end of history, but the film's plot suggests that the end of history is a political event. The idea that we reach a point where, you know, neoliberal capitalism has won and nothing will arise to challenge it, which is clearly not borne out. But it's more interesting now watching it as a cultural statement, understanding that maybe the end of history is a cultural rather than a political phenomenon. This idea of an arrested development, of what happens with our old heroes when we put them out to pasture. Do we ever get past things like Star Trek? Do we ever allow these things from our childhood to come to an end and acknowledge...
We talked about this about Rocky as well, in terms of Creed 2 and what to do with them.
Yeah, that's it exactly. And like The Undiscovered Country's amazing... I'm rewatching it. It's fantastic. It is the best Star Trek film, I would argue. And a large part of that is down to the fact that it acknowledges that Kirk as a character and Shatner and Star Trek as a property, the original series, was a product of its time and times have changed. And that doesn't belittle or diminish it or undermine it in any way, but it's a fact of life that has to be acknowledged. And time moves on, and that's not a sad thing. It's not a sad thing that Kirk
Why can't we accept that now?
That's it exactly. Why can't we? I mean, the Undiscovered
I
Country
mean, it's
is
still there.
Yeah.
They're still there. Like, they're not
Yeah.
gone.
The Undiscovered Country, very famously, is misquoted in the film as referring to the future rather than death, as Shakespeare put it. But there's something almost clever in the way that the film juxtaposes those two concepts, where it's the idea that maybe the future is death. Maybe the future is allowing these things to pass into the Undiscovered Country. And I really, really loved it. And again, cast are fantastic, script is charming, direction's very, very good. And yeah,
I haven't seen the Star Trek films in quite a long time. I did watch them all back in the day.
okay.
I'd have to revisit.
2, 3, 4, 6, 8.
But it's the even numbers, isn't it? That always the...
Even numbers is a bit misleading now.
No, but don't people say that, though?
They do say that. That's the sort of like stock Simon
Yeah.
Pegg nerd wisdom.
Oh, God, I don't agree with Simon Pegg.
But yeah.
Just a chill down my back.
All right, so let's talk about the week in film news.
Hit me. What do you got?
So, show me what you got.
Wah!
Yeah. So let's start with a couple of festivals that are happening at the IFI in the coming weeks, which is great. There's some really great lineups. The third East Asia Film Festival Ireland has announced its lineup. It'll be running from April 11th through 14th.
I haven't gone to any one of these, and I always feel I should, because Asian cinema, I'm kind of pretty woeful on. Like, I've seen a bit, but not nearly as much as I should.
It's generally not. It's generally hard not to be, because they just don't get enough distribution here, which is why something like this is really important.
And the Lighthouse do a Japanese film festival as well.
Yeah,
which I don't get,
yeah.
So we should.
Japanese-
There's no excuse. We should get to the bloody.
Well, the
thing.
Japanese Film Festival Ireland also, and again,
It's-
to acknowledge we're
it's
talking about the East Asian
Ireland's
one, but the Japanese...
only all island.
That's exactly
film
it
festival.
tours. It like it.
Yeah.
I mean, as a Sligo resident, I'm thrilled that it screens
Yeah,
at the Nyland Art
it's
Gallery.
it's amazing,
the
and it's great.
Melbourne.
It would be lovely to see more festivals do things like that. But this, the East Asian Film Festival has really gone from strength to strength. I've only caught 1 or 2 screenings at each of the previous 2 years, and I'm really gonna try to throw myself into it this year. They have Tsai Ming Liang as a guest, which is a really big scoop for any festival. He did Stray Dogs a few years back, which is kind of held up across the criticism world as one of the best films of 2013, I think it was. I never saw it in the end, but he'll be presenting a few of his films. I'm really excited
there's
for that.
3 of them. So 2 of his classic films that are kind of hard to see, they're rarities. So The River and I Don't Want to Sleep Alone, and his latest, The Face, Your Face, will also be screening as
I
well.
must try to get some of these.
And they're hosting a masterclass as well, actually. So
Very
if
good.
you are interested
Yeah.
in sort of like the study. And again, there's a host of other films on there as well, including like a number of Irish premieres, such as Hong Sang-soo's latest comedy drama, which is Hotel by the River, for example.
Except he's made another one since, probably, knowing him.
Quite possibly the way this is going. And there'll be, so there's a host of great stuff there, closing with Manta Ray and yeah, it really looks like a great lineup. It's happening from Thursday the 11th of April through to Sunday the 14th.
I've
and
done
you
it
can get
twice.
tickets
At least a
at
couple
the
of
IFI.
times.
Packed. There's loads there. Go.
Yeah. And in terms of other seasons at the IFI, there's another one. The IFI are spoiling us this April. Donal Foreman, who is one of our sort of,
Friend of the
love,
podcast.
We love
Banged on enough about
we
it.
love all Irish directors. We really do. But Donal Foreman is one that we have a particularly soft spot
He's
for.
made 2 great films, and the one I think this kind of season is probably sprung from his latest one, which is The Image You Missed, and his dad's film,
Which is showing as part of it.
Yes.
Yeah, which is shown as part of it, which I didn't see on the big screen, so I may have to catch on the
The
big screen.
season is Northern Ireland, our Battle of Images, which is being hosted at the Irish Film Institute. And Donal Foreman's programming it. And the idea is basically we're so used to images of the Troubles through the lens of like news media and archive footage. This is very much about taking films, particularly international films, and sort of looking at sort of their view of the Troubles. And you're right, actually, that The Image You Missed is screening. It's screening on Monday the 15th of April as well. So you can jump straight from the East Asian Film Festival into this.
Good Lord.
Alongside Arthur McCraig's Irish Ways, which was the documentary that I believe he culled a lot of footage from.
He pulls from a few different
it's
things.
his father's
Patriot,
one, isn't it?
the Patriot Game is a big one that his father did, but Irish Ways is kind of the second one that he pulls a lot from in The Image You Missed.
They're also showing Pat Murphy's Maeve.
Yes.
Which is really, really great.
2 young women returning to Belfast after
And I
studying
really
art.
want to see that.
I think the real strength of The Image You Missed in a lot of ways was the way that Foreman managed to pull together sort of existing material. So curation seems like a natural thing for him to spring into. And these look like great things. Going back to what we said earlier about sort of the availability of older Irish films, it's just great to see a season like this, and I can't wait to dive in.
For that week.
So St. Clair Bourne's, it's more than a week. It's
good
spread
Lord.
over a fortnight, I believe. Like it's closing on Tuesday the 30th with Marcel O'Foole's A Sense of Loss.
So that's a good spread. Oh, that's okay then, because
so it'll be evenly spread out. And you'll be easier. Yeah, that's it. I suspect you won't too many conflicts. Sinclair Bourne's The Black and the Green, which is a screening, is a unique chronicle of a fact-finding trip to Belfast made by 5 black civil rights activists in 1982. They have John Riley and Stefan Moore's The Irish Tapes, a documentary filmed in Belfast over a 3-year period in the early 1970s, supported by a US group associated with the official IRA. And Ireland Behind the Wire, which is a first-hand documentary made by a British filmmaking collective exploring the early years of the Troubles from Bloody Sunday through to the burning of Dublin's British Embassy in 1972. And again, you can get tickets online at the IFI as well, which is pretty great. And we'll include the links, obviously, in the text of the podcast as well.
2 great seasons.
Yeah. And like you want to look at seasons that are running abroad, the 2019 Hot Docs Film Festival in Toronto will be hosting 2 Irish documentaries. Boea, Caught in the Crossfire.
Those docs are so hot right now.
Which is Oisin Kearney's film, which will have its world premiere in the World Showcase Strand, which is pretty great. And this one actually got rave reviews when it aired when it broadcast at the film festival, I think on the last Saturday, Shooting the Mafia. Which is Kim Longinotto's.
Niall saw that, and I think he was a big fan of it.
I've had people who are not like necessarily film people rave to me.
Yeah, I do want to catch this.
Yeah. So I mean, you can just fly to Toronto, Jay.
If Scannain wants to fund that, I'm all over it. Like,
but yeah, it's the largest documentary film festival, conference and market. Its 26th annual edition will run from April 25th through to May 5th.
Nice.
So that's pretty good.
So if you can put me up for 2 weeks in a hotel as well, that'd be fantastic.
In terms of other news, Irish films abroad, Liam O'Moken's Lost and Found is actually opening in North America pretty much the Friday that we're recording this, which is March 22nd, which will be opening in Boston, San Francisco, and Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. That's
very specific.
Well, it's rolling out.
No, I
smaller
I was joking.
And I mean, Boston seems a good starting ground for an Irish film.
Idea.
Sure.
And then it'll expand to New York, Albany, Toronto, Edmonton, or Calgary on March 29th. And then it'll hit Chicago and Washington, who have to wait a couple of weeks then for April 12th. And then it'll hit Los Angeles, Long Beach, Miami, and Seattle on April 19th. So it's quite an interesting sort of rollout they're doing there. This is a film that we talked about last year. I still haven't seen
I haven't seen it.
But it's been on the list to sort of keep an eye out, if only because I know one of the stars casually. I know.
Such a name dropper.
I know. I haven't actually dropped the name, so it's okay.
You were in fair.
It'll be in the show notes.
It'll be. Thank you. In terms of other news, internationally, we didn't really talk about this, so very briefly, apparently a ceasefire has been declared in the war between Spielberg and Netflix.
I was wondering where that sentence was going. Politics? Okay.
But yeah, apparently, so apparently he had a long dinner with Toronto. But you have to imagine that at some point somebody goes, you realise Marty is there, right?
Yeah, you might end up having to go to Netflix for 200 million to make something.
Spielberg probably won't. Spielberg's probably safe.
No,
but
I wouldn't be shocked to see Spielberg making a film for Netflix.
Or a TV show.
Well, I mean, make a TV show, because that's what it is to him. But I can't see him going with a proper.
No, probably not, because he'll get funders.
Yeah, no matter what.
That's true.
There's a handful of directors.
He's not stuck for the money.
It's him and Nolan, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah,
which is Ritchie.
Pretty good company.
Remarkably.
Surviving.
What are the terms of this ceasefire?
Apparently it's not been disclosed to the public. Yeah, apparently it's not been disclosed to the public, but they had a full and frank conversation over dinner in which both sides were heard and allowed to air their grievances.
Netflix can
eat? Not entirely. Yeah,
I'm curious.
Netflix has become sentient.
But it is
the algorithm.
It feeds on content.
The Netflix.
The companies
Ted
pivot to people in their
pivot to people.
No, in their social media thing, like companies becoming people.
Yes,
it's one of the worst things to happen in the internet, and quite so. It's horrifying.
Really?
It's gross.
Really, the worst thing to happen on the internet?
No, it's one of the worst things to happen in a while. I understand.
It's not a good thing. It's a bad thing, but it's nowhere near that.
Darren, I am not comparing it to politics and horrible things that are happening. We are on a film podcast. In the context of film podcast, I am saying it's horrifying. Netflix pretending to be a person is horrifying. Companies pretend to be people are horrifying.
You don't have personality.
Also,
they do have personalities, which is really creepy.
Can I complain actually with something while I went on it?
Please, that's why we pay you.
Did we stop you?
No.
Do we pay him?
Oh, do we?
Did we?
Must have been a hiccup in the accounts.
I must check out my accounts. I was at a film yesterday in the cinema, and there was 3 different mortgage ads for 3 different banks. in the ads.
3. Good.
Also, I think AIB and Bank weren't. When I open a cinema one day, there will be no banks advertising in my cinema. That's all I got to say. End the party political broadcast.
All right.
You can put that out.
No, that's staying in. I mean, I think we
right.
famously opened this podcast with a really strange half-hour ramble about American politics being messed up.
We did, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah,
Infamously.
myself and Niall, who were at the table, were a little bit silent on that.
Myself
one.
and Grace might have ranted a little bit.
That is a fair point, though, because I think
it
I
isn't.
am not alone among a generation
Who will
who
likely never-
goes to the cinema for the escapism of not
Yeah,
being
not
able to
being
afford a
afford a
house.
house, yeah, exactly.
So please don't market houses at me while I'm
Yeah.
there trying to escape from that grim reality. Thank you.
I do quite like the one where it's like, hey, we finished paying our mortgage off. Get a mortgage.
Good for you, Jerry.
kids,
Don't
yeah.
see you in the cinema.
Yeah.
Where's my
Probably got a
Molotov
home
cocktail?
cinema.
And in terms of other sort of...
Sorry, I'm not condoning Molotov cocktail throwing. Literally because it's hard to get them anymore. Anyway, go on.
They don't let you...
They don't let me
why
use them
they
anymore.
don't. They don't serve you alcohol in the cinema, Jay.
This is why we don't pay you.
It's
you,
true.
You spend it all on
Criminal record.
Molotov cocktails. And in
Anyway, we've gone off piece a little bit here.
have-
Let's pull it back together again.
we have gone a little bit off track here.
I've almost confessed to a crime. Let's get it back on track, Darren, for the love of God.
All right, we did have one other piece of international
hit
film
me.
news, but I have completely forgotten what... Oh, James Gunn is back directing Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Finally. I'm glad he's
Laughing
doing
all
that.
the way to the bank to take
Which-
it back on topic.
Amazing! Like, well, this is the thing. Like, people talk about like cancel culture and the idea.
Why did
of,
he
like,
take him off? It's
But-
absurd.
But no.
Bizarre.
But I mean, it's an interesting thing because like people have been arguing, well, what do you have to do to be forgiven? And it turns out that James Gunn offers a pretty sturdy, like straightforward thing. You apologize profusely. You accept ownership of the
Yeah.
thing that you've done. You apologize. You back away. You go quiet. You continue to work in whatever you want to do while acknowledging that what you did was wrong. You shouldn't have done it. But you don't play the victim or present yourself as a martyr.
And his crimes weren't quite the crimes
No,
of...
they certainly weren't. There's a massive difference between that and Roseanne Barr, for example.
Or John Lasseter
Or
Special Hopes.
any of that sort of
Yeah,
stuff. But it's
That's
interesting.
what he called them. Don't laugh at me.
Just every time you say
I
that.
know.
I love it.
But yeah, no, it's kind of heartening, and it's kind of he will be directing both The Suicide Squad and Guardians of the
that's
Galaxy.
great.
I
Two
get the
films
feeling
I
he's
definitely
probably
want to see.
sent an email to Warner Brothers being like, I'm not feeling great right now.
Yeah, I feel kind of sick.
The dog ate my Suicide Squad.
Script, which is a soft reboot, by the way.
I'm
Which will
not seeing it,
star
Darren. I don't
Idris Elba.
care.
What's
Darren,
a soft reboot?
It could be made
mean?
of water. I'm
A
never
soft
going to see
reboot
it.
is that it will maybe not reference the last film, pretend the last film didn't happen, but without necessarily.
Well, this
explicitly
audience have
pretending.
done that, though, haven't they? So it's grand.
Yeah. But yeah, Margot Robbie will be back. It will star Idris Elba. It will star the great Batman villain, the underappreciated classic Batman villain, Polka Dot Man, in his
Would you
much
stop? That's not a
long-
real thing.
long delayed screen
There's-
debut.
I saw some ad on the I can't even remember what it was for, but it's some mad superhero film that you could never imagine them making 10 years ago. But now they'll make anything. Anything at all.
But Polka Dot Man, by the way, appeared in Lego Batman. I'm surprised you didn't recognize.
Can we soft reboot the Guardians of the Galaxy? Don't we remember, so we can say number 2 didn't exist.
I did not say number 2, so I can.
That's a separate
It's
debate.
literally
I mean,
a number
you
2
say,
and a number 2.
it is okay.
It is not.
I love the idea that Ronan is going to see Guardians of the Galaxy 3. You heard it
No,
here
I'm not.
first, ladies and
No,
gentlemen.
it's not.
No,
What are you talking
We're talking
about?
about soft rebooting it for number 3. You have it here, ladies and gentlemen. Ronan will
soft
be
serve
there on
for Ronan.
opening day.
Oy.
It's soft serve of number 2 for Ronan.
All right, let's
Sorry.
move on to the top 10.
Sorry.
I'm
This
sick
is
of
why
this
we
shit.
Oh God, I'm tired. Go on,
Why
go
we
on,
don't
Darren, sorry.
let you guys out.
I know, that's good. It's a good thing.
All right.
I'm so hungry.
All right. At number 10.
Oh Lord.
Keep in mind now that, Under the Silver Lake didn't make the top 10.
What?
Yeah.
I
So
am
at,
stunned.
at number 10, Fisherman's Friends.
I saw the trailer for this the other day, and I'm probably not going to see it.
Where is it out here?
I presume it's showing in like
Is it in
Cineworld.
Cineworld?
It's-
Cineworld, yeah, it's.
I haven't seen ads for it.
AKA
or
the
anything.
movie Warehouse, yeah.
It's it's very generic looking.
Yeah.
I'd say.
It's the full Monty, but with fishing instead of steelworks.
And without any sense of
singing without shipping.
personality, though. It doesn't have that kind of full month, whatever.
James Purfoy, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know.
At number 9, Fighting With My Family, which has actually done relatively
Yeah,
well
it's been
here,
hanging around for a while.
which is pretty good. And it's a charming film. It doesn't necessarily surprise, but it's solid, sturdy, well made. The Rock strikes again, which is good. Sadly, though, it does not feature a sequence in which The Rock refers to a giant CGI gorilla as his best friend George.
Oh, rats.
That was what held it back from the 5 stars. At number 8, A Dog's Way Home, which is hanging on in there.
No.
€700,000 at the Irish box office.
Wow.
We like dogs.
We do like dogs.
Really, really like dogs.
They're such good boys.
Good girls in this case.
Indeed.
At number 7, and I apologize to any Polish listeners, this is the name of the film as best I can pronounce it.
Oh dear.
Mizmash Sizzle Kogel Mogul 3, which is a Polish film that has come into... it's at number 7, earning nearly €25,000 in its opening weekend. Again, this is one of those third films that...
Finding, is it?
Like Damal. No, I imagine that it's airing at... it's broadcasting at Cineworld.
Yeah, they do that every so often.
I don't imagine it's a special novelty screening. I just imagine it's screening, like regular.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, this is one of those films that, like, I suspect Ronan refuses to believe is a trilogy. Like Damal or Race.
Why have I never heard of 1 and 2? How did it get a sequel?
All right, at number 6, it's How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. €1.5 million to date.
I've never got to this. I did mean to, and I didn't. So.
Stop dragging your feet there.
It'll be here for another 7 weeks, for God's sake.
At number 5, Jay's second favorite Best Picture nominee this year. It's Green Book.
Stop propagating that lie. It's my 4th favorite.
It's already gone viral.
It has.
But €1.1 million so far.
I'm not surprised.
We love this movie.
It's broad enough to go over well. Particularly in an older age group, I suspect. Like
At
me.
number 4, a new release, What Men Want.
Which you've seen.
Which I've seen, and I didn't hate. Didn't really like it that much. But it's about as good as a movie like this can be. It's a much better execution of formula than, I think we talked about this stuff like, say, Second Act. Or even stuff like Isn't It Romantic? It's got no surprises. It doesn't work for any of its punchlines when it thinks it can score an easy and cheap layup. But it's held together by Tarisha P. Henson's just sheer force of... personality.
She's good.
And interestingly enough, while we were both at the cinema this week, yes, we had a date night. I'm offended that you don't remember because we're going to be talking about it shortly.
I'm trying to get rid of it from my memory, but go on.
There was a trailer for Little, suggesting that there's an interesting market in this sort of gender and racial reverse sort of like nostalgic concepts.
I also saw a trailer for Wonder Park. We won't talk about that.
Yeah, well, Wonder Park is its own
doesn't have a director because of
but yeah, what men want. What
Oh.
Men Want feels very much like a sort of it's a blaxploitation riff on What Women Want, the Mel Gibson film, right down to casting Shaft himself, Richard Roundtree, as her father. But we were at the cinema and we saw a trailer for Little, which is a remake of Big.
We did, yeah.
Regina Hall.
This was an odd one. I wasn't
as a
expecting that.
corporate executive who gets turned into a child and has to go back to school. Read it from that what you will about contemporary society and our aspirations, desires.
There's a couple of scenes and I was watching. I was like, ooh. Okay.
Yeah, there are a couple of those that'll be interested to see if they make the final cut. At number 3. We'll talk about that off the podcast. At number 3, it's the Lego Movie 2, having earned nearly €2 million at the Irish box office to date. And Jay, I believe
I saw it the weekend. On a beastly time at 5 to 10 Sunday morning.
Oh, wow.
When you're babysitting, that's what kind of thing happens.
Was it good for your peace of mind?
Yeah.
Didn't have to block out any...
Oh, God, here we go. Sorry. I'll just give you a few minutes. Go on, get them on. Come on.
Go on. Sorry, I apologize for interrupting you.
Let it go, Darren. Let it.
That's Frozen.
But no, it's also
okay.
Tea and Lego.
As sequels go, it's not bad.
Ringing endorsement.
No, I mean, do you know what works? If it ain't broke, don't fix it type thing. It's more of the same. And if you liked it, you're gonna like this. The script is kind of funny. There's good laughs to be had. Haddish is a great addition to it.
And she gets one of the year's great musical numbers.
Yes. I love Haddish. Anytime I see her name, and
particularly because she's not necessarily well served by the films that she's done.
No, she's much better than the material she's generally given, and elevates material that's trash a lot of the time. Yeah. She's very, very good, and the music number she does it really, really well, and it's probably the highlight of the film. I like that. It's not great. It's not bad.
Yeah, it's nowhere near as sort of, again, you can't get the hit that the original was. No. You can't get that sort of left field. No. Well, I was expecting something generic and this is brilliant. And now you're like, well, I was expecting something brilliant and this is pretty good, I guess.
I wasn't expecting brilliant though. Mostly because you kind of told me it wasn't. But No, I mean the sequel. I mean it's okay. I mean
I liked it a lot.
It's better than the Lego Batman, which was pretty terrible.
Although to be honest, Jay, if you don't recognize Polka Dot Man, I'm not even sure you watched the Lego Batman.
I must have missed that, Darren.
But yeah, no.
When I was rolling my eyes. No, it's pretty good. Like I
right up there with
it.
Condiment King. As
also, it has
famous B-level Batman.
Yes. It also has Maya Rudolph popping up. So the Maya Rudolph Tiffany Haddish film that I Paul Thomas Anderson making, and hope will one day they almost got together. It's not bad. I quite enjoyed it.
And again, I think it does some interesting things in terms of theme, in terms of developing ideas from the first film. I just think it can't repeat the tricks. And those tricks that it replays don't have the same novelty.
No, that's the problem with it. I mean, it's well-worn ground at this stage. So, yeah.
At number 2, somehow, still, Instant Family.
Oh no!
1.3 million euro at the Irish box office.
Mark Wahlberg, isn't it?
Yeah, it's again, it's probably a sign of how turbulent the first couple of months of the year have been that this is still at number 2, despite a relatively low gross. It's earned less than, say, the Lego Movie, to pick an example, and it's already earned significantly less than the movie that is directly above it on the list as well, despite the fact that it has been around for significantly longer.
Okay.
But yeah, let's just skip straight to number 1 then, which is Captain Marvel, which took €500,000 this weekend to bump it up to 1.6 million euro.
It's going like gangbusters worldwide as well.
It's amazing. Yeah,
it's nearly 800 million now.
Staggering. It's pretty much set to break the billion again, which is great.
Comfortably, I'd say at this stage.
And I mean, I do wish the film were better. I think that it's mid-tier. I think that it suffers from a number of poor narrative choices, but it's great to see it doing well.
Yeah, I haven't caught it. I'm hoping to catch it by next week. We shall see. Sorry, that made it more dramatic than it was. I hope to catch it next week.
Okay. Will you be watching it before you get to Avengers Endgame?
When is that out?
That is out in April.
Good lord. They move quick.
Time for this. Do you know how many movie films I haven't seen? Good lord.
Pick your priorities, Jay.
I know, I do. Vardis. Always.
I know that Endgame is one of your most anticipated movies.
Really,
I'm not even joking.
No,
I'm not joking. I know it is.
I really like Infinity War. I can't wait for Endgame.
You know that they've actually admitted that a lot of the footage they used in the trailers is from the films.
I don't care.
Okay.
Do you know I miss actually that they used to make trailers that were separate to films?
They don't
do that anymore. Really.
But I mean,
Trainspotting famously had a trailer where Ewan McGregor gets tied to the train tracks and they run away, leave him there, and trains come towards him. He's talking to the camera, which is a great trailer. Nothing to do with the film.
But again, you're talking about the trailer for Psycho, which was Alfred Hitchcock explaining that he could not show you any footage for Psycho because
make sure you don't show up late.
Yeah. But yeah,
but I like that. That's
I kind of do, and I mean, the issue is though that you don't have that many names or directors. You're all selling on properties now. Like if you're selling these big films, you're selling them on the property attached to them rather than the name the trust for the audience sort of association.
It's a lost art though, good trailer making and stuff like that. Because we were myself and Darren were at a film this week, which we'll get to, but they showed the trailer for Greta, which we've both seen at the film festival.
And it's the entire film in microcosm.
It's not, it's not only that, which you kind of expect a lot of time in trailers. There's at least two pieces of information that really shouldn't be shown.
Yes, because they work very well, and when we watch it blind,
it's part of one of those things you go,
yeah.
And
it's a great reveal in the film. It's a fantastic.
No, it is. No, it absolutely is.
In the trailer, it's just like that's something happened, I guess.
This is just depressingly common at this point. I am now 3 years, 2 months into not watching trailers outside of when they're forced on me in the cinema. And that's why I haven't looked back.
I really hate it.
This is one of the things that really bothers me. And again, I've had, sorry to go off on one again, but we talked about like Captain Marvel and the issue of Captain Marvel being spoiler culture because it's designed around a twist that isn't really a twist. It's a plot development that makes perfect sense if you think about the film's concept. But like we live in a culture where everybody is so spoiler-averse and so afraid of having anything at all spoiled about a movie that they're going to watch, which is... You know, I understand that, like, we live in a world where information is just flowing freely, and you can spoil a film. You can spoil something like The Usual Suspects, or you can spoil something like, say, The Sixth Sense or whatever, and you can undercut the experience of watching it. But at the same time, we live in a culture where everybody's like, well, I don't even want to know if this actor's in it, or if this character's in it, or if, like, it's going to follow these beats. And the irony is that despite that, we manufacture trailers, which are the movie in miniature, right down to the 3-act structure. It plays out a truncated 3-act structure, but also along the lines of, like, these are selling films where there are very few surprises, because if there were genuine surprises, the internet would lose its mind, and studios are aware of that and don't want that anymore.
I'd also add, like, Infinity War did a really good trailer in terms of not really revealing anything this week.
Endgame.
Endgame, sorry. I really liked the trailer. So there, that's all I gotta say.
All right. So let's move on to the new releases. In terms of new releases, 5 Feet Apart is opening.
I saw the trailer for this. There are a lot of movie of the weeks coming out these days, aren't there? This is.
But I mean, these are you're talking about low budget. Yeah, you're talking about like low budget, cost effective
two
filmmaking.
cystic fibrosis people who are impossibly beautiful.
Played by Cole Sprouse and
that's
Haley
not a
Lou
real
Richardson.
name, by the way. Nobody is called Cole Sprouse. But that name
Cole
comes to
Sprouse,
cinema,
he's from,
and I said, "Would you?"
Along with Logan Lerman.
Yeah.
Disney kid, right?
Yep.
That's a ridiculous name for anybody to have. You should not
He
be
does look
successful
like
with a name
Timothy
like that.
Chalamet when I look
He
at it.
does. He's like the Yellow Pack.
Very much like a sort of,
But anyway, yeah.
Because A24...
They bought
Ronan
him.
is validating. Yeah,
They bought Lucas Hedges and got him
does.
free.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
It was a double deal. They bought Lucas Hedges and got him free.
Yeah.
But this is like two young kids who have to stay 6 feet apart, which is the rules of young. No, that's the medical rule. It's a real thing that they don't give each other
6 feet for the Holy Spirit.
No, it's not. Stop it. You're a disgrace.
Oh, we're gone. Come back next week.
But anyway, the trailer is remarkable in that you would not watch this film with a gun to your head. It looks so mawkish and horrible. And we're going to lose that foot. We can now stand 5 feet apart. Then it comes to 5 feet apart. Just stop, will you, lads?
There's
Starring
genuinely
Cold
a
Sprouse.
weird trend in the last
There's
couple
a
of
load of-
years of very often terminally sick children and their love stories.
Yeah.
It's
started
like
off
a
with,
weird need
what's
to
the one
up
that
the
made a fortune?
stakes. The Fault in Our Stars was one of the
No,
big
the one
ones.
before that, where do you go to Anne Frank's house?
That is the fault.
Just
Oh,
The
is
Fault in
it?
Our Stars
Oh,
with
sorry, is that-
the romantic
that
Anne
made like
Frank house
500
kiss,
million
which
for a
is
5 million budget.
absurd. But has a great performance by Willem Dafoe.
And I've just realised that that's
Everything is
exactly
fantastic.
what Pop Star Never Stop, Never Stopping was making fun of
Yeah.
with its Anna and Frank
yeah.
house.
There you
That's
go.
a cracking film.
That's amazing film.
I
I
love
really
that.
hope
I
that
love
ages
that.
very well.
I hope so too.
But yeah,
No, this looks like another one of those. I mean, your
there are a lot
mileage
of
will
them.
vary. It looks terrible. Like, I mean, terrible.
I have no idea what this film is. Written and directed by Christophe Onair, which is Sorry Angel, starring Vincent Lacoste and Dennis Podolades.
Never.
I can't help you here either, I'm afraid.
Okay, let's. The White Crow is also out. After
Ray
its
Fiennes, right?
Vimdiff, yes.
Oh, it's just the
directed by
Nuria
Ray
one.
Fiennes. Yes. Written by David Hare and adapted from the book by Julie Kavanagh and directed by Ray Fiennes.
It looks. I saw the trailer for this a while back. It looks very wordy and
Our man in the
prestige-y and-
field, Phil Bagnall, saw this at the London Film Festival
how
and
did
was
he-
not necessarily impressed with it.
Nah, it looks that
He
way. I can
consciously-
understand it.
He advised me against going to see it on the Friday night of Vimdiff. Little did he know that I was going to end up seeing She's Missing. Now, I can't compare the two films, but it seems like I had Sophie's choice.
What
way that
was
it
She's Missing?
She's Missing is the Irish premiere.
Oh, is that the one set in
Vimdiff.
Texas or wherever the hell it is?
Yes, starring Isa Gonzalez and
yeah.
Josh Hartnell. Yeah.
That was a bad choice, sorry.
Yeah.
But they're all bad choices.
Sometimes they are, it seems.
Yeah.
And yeah, so in terms of, I think that about wraps it up. I can't think of any other new
Really?
release this week.
Bye.
Yes, out this week is Us, which was myself and Jay's date night earlier in the week.
What a date.
It was indeed. Very much Rashomon style, based on conversations we've had since.
Yeah. I mean,
Jordan Peele's follow-up to
yes,
Get Out.
The
just to-
preface said I'm a huge Peel fan. I really
you really get his
like-
appeal?
I do. I'm a huge fan of Get Out. Took me a couple of watches to really appreciate it, but I really, really like it. I think it's pretty great.
So on your first watch of Us,
yeah, on my first and last watch of Us, I was not a fan, and I was really disappointed because I was hoping, like, I wasn't expecting something off the level of
Get Out.
Get Out, but I was hoping for something on the level of decent, and to my mind, I didn't get it, and that's tremendously disappointing. This I mentioned earlier on, the 7 Psychopath Syndrome, and this is another one that feels that way, and this is exactly what I was alluding to. The Get Out's huge. Have you got anything else that we can rush straight to production? Yeah, I wrote this a while ago, but I didn't really get through it 4th or 5th or 6th or 7th or 8th or 9th draft. That doesn't matter, we'll film, it's fine. Fill in the rest with visuals. And if, to my mind, I really felt like that. And I sat beside Darren and I was making occasional would you stops and laughs occasionally at the wrong points.
I entirely recommend that listeners experience this. It's a great way to see a film. We call it,
I imagine it's really
we
irritating.
call it
if
the
you're not
JV
me.
Club.
Yes.
Seeing a film that Jay doesn't like with Jay is
wonderful.
An experience.
Especially if you don't like it too.
Yeah, I imagine it'll ruin it if you really love it. Sorry.
Um,
But no, the script was the major problem. There's a couple of structural issues to my mind, and I'm aware that I'm not really going to say much about it, except to say there are a couple of things that happen and a couple of things that don't happen that are so boneheadedly annoying that I wanted to headbutt the wall. Also, it has an exposition dump of mythic proportions about 3/4 of the way through the film. That goes never-endingly.
It's close to 90% of the way through, but yeah.
Wow.
Oh, is it? Is it? I felt like I was watching going, this is going to end. Also, we knew all of this. Also, what the hell are you talking about? But let's make the teams really big so we can all understand them.
Oh no.
We can all hold hands and do it. There's some good laughs earlier on. The cast are great. Lupita is doing her thing, and she's fantastic in 2 different roles. She's very good.
Amazing, fantastic performance. But again, she's been great forever.
Yeah, she has. It's a couple of good jumps here and there that are not bad. But Jesus, I have a hard time finding that good. It's not good.
I really enjoyed it.
I know you did.
Listeners. It's obviously nowhere near as good as Get Out, which is unfortunate, but I still found it good fun. It's very much in the style of mid-tier Craven and Carpenter. It's this very broad, old-fashioned sort of horror movie. It starts as a home invasion, then sort of escalates into another sort of genre of horror as well on top of that. And it's very much, it feels like Peele is doing something in response to some of the criticism of Get Out, which is always an interesting thing as a director. Where you had a lot of criticisms of Get Out, which is that it's not scary, it's not a conventional horror film, it's just masquerading as a horror. It's that whole elevated horror nonsense that you get, where it's like, it can be both a horror and an important piece of social commentary.
And it is.
And they have been forever.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have that, and you have like a sense, watching us, it often feels like Peele is going, well, look, fine, screw it. I can do standard Universal style, like early year horror movie, home invasion. I think he does. You point to the scares working in the first half.
Yeah.
And
a couple.
And the tension builds remarkably well. Again, like Get Out is built around a pot boiler, but the pot doesn't boil until quite late in the film. This boils at the end of the first act very clearly, and then becomes this thing that is, again, not to get too spoilery, but feels very much of a piece with, say, The Purge or The Strangers or that sort of stuff.
The problem I had here, and again I allude to it rather than say it, is that the tension doesn't work for me because explicitly something is not going to happen that you think is going to happen or could possibly happen, and it's quite clear earlier on that this is not going to happen.
I thought there was tension up until a point, and then after that point it sort of changed tack almost to the point where it didn't matter that was no longer something that was on the menu, so to speak.
Peele can do what you're talking about in terms of that kind of mid-tier horror. He can't leave the grand statements alone to make something important. And that doesn't work here, Darren.
What's interesting about this, and this is kind of fascinating, is that I'm reading a lot of the reviews from the States of us, particularly after having seen the film. And there's a lot of debate about what the film is about, which is very weird. Again, and this is something where Get Out, like, one of the things I loved about it, and it's a 5-star horror film. It's one of the few 5 stars I've given in the past 3 years, I think. Second last 5-star that I've awarded to a film. The last being Dunkirk, of course. But Get Out is a movie that is very clear in what it's saying consistently from beginning to end. It's almost impossible to miss. It's so clear a statement and so refined and so like perfectly engineered.
You refined the script, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But it's very much sharpened to a razor sharp edge and sort of like launched, and there's no way that you could misinterpret it or misread it. And it's kind of interesting reading the reviews of us where there's a lot of discussion about what the film's about and a lot of haziness around that. And again, watching it, I think I have a pretty good handle on what it's about.
Yeah.
But it's and again, you talk about how the film is blatant, and I think that it is. It's very much thematic horror. It's again, you've got that thematic exposition.
What I would say in terms of you were talking about those reviews, so I've read some of them as well.
Yeah.
What I would say about that, to my mind, this points to the script's issue that it's a bit all over the place, and that's where it's not clear because the script's not clear.
Right.
Even though you can extrapolate, I think fairly clearly
what it's saying.
And it does things to make it quite clear, like really clear in case at certain points. But yeah, I'd agree with you. I think it's quite clear what he's going for. But it is a grand statement, though. He can't leave the grand statements alone.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Again, like you have the Craven Carpenter school, of which I would argue Get Out is like a great example.
I agree, but can I just say, in Get Out or in the Craven Carpenter things, and particularly around the top tier or even mid tier of those things, the stuff that you're talking about and we're talking about here is buried in the script. This is surface because it's the script in my mind hasn't had enough passes at it, and it's too obvious, it's too broad, it's too clunky, it's just doesn't work.
I enjoyed it a lot, and I have to admit, I actually quite enjoyed its showcase of Peele as a visual director. Because again, with Get Out,
I think
there's
he
a
does some
tendency to
nice work
focus
with
on the
camera.
script and stuff like that. There's a lot of really great camera work here. There's an opening shot of a child look out at the top of a dark staircase, silhouetted against the backdrop of a funfair, which is just
great shot. And I said it at the time.
Yeah, and there's even one later on, and again, they're at a beach, and nothing particularly scary is happening, but you get the camera positioned in such a way that the shadows are sort of across the dunes, and it's very striking. And again,
I think he's a very good filmmaker. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're always going to make a great film.
Oh no,
that's
like I mean. Again, I'm wary of Cole saying it is or isn't a great film. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a very good film. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as Get Out.
No, certainly not. I think we can both agree on that.
We can both agree on that. All right, then.
I have one very important question. When we say mid-tier Craven, are we talking like Serpent of the Rainbow?
I think Serpent of the Rainbow is underrated. I'm thinking.
I do too. I like it a lot.
So I'm not talking that sort of stuff. I'm talking more among the Craven stuff that I've probably forgotten I've seen. But I will happily watch when it comes on, and I'll be like, yeah, this is great. I really enjoy this. How come I don't watch this all the time? Thinking about say Prince of Darkness for Carpenter, that sort of stuff.
I think it's much. Prince of Darkness is a great film.
Prince of Darkness is great, but yeah, again. Okay, so maybe actually else is a great film. Thank you for that comparison. But I don't think Prince of Darkness is top tier. I don't think it's there with say In the Mouth of Madness, for example, or They Live.
No, I think In the Mouth of Madness is top tier, and They Live and all the rest. I agree.
And sort of this is more, I would argue, on the level of say Prince of Darkness, which is a film that I really like.
It's anyway.
All right,
I've said my piece.
Anyway, so if listeners are looking for a bit more Jay, a bit more Ronan in their lives, where can they find you guys online?
I'll be continually disappointed by films at Jay Coyle.
At Baron Ronan.
J. Perfect. And I have a bit of an announcement if this thing's going out.
You getting married?
I
Finally!
Well, I mean, my podcast co-host has moved in with me, but that's a big
Yay!
deal in our...
I know you can get married, Darren. The world has changed these days.
The values have
it's
shifted.
Wonderful. It's great.
So yeah, I wanted to tell you guys off air, but thank you for just throwing that out.
That's
there.
all right. Sorry.
But yeah, one of the consequences or side effects of that is that this weekend, which is the weekend of the 23rd of March, I am co-hosting something that is insane, but also for a very good cause. So to support Daffodil Day, which is the annual fundraising day for the Irish Cancer Society, myself and Andrew Quinn, who co-host the 250 together, are doing the 250 live, and we are covering Twin Peaks: The Return, David Lynch's 2017 18-hour, is it a TV show? Is it a movie? Showtime event, basically covering that sort of in-depth live from 2 p.m. Irish time, GMT, through to 8 a.m. GMT on Sunday.
All 18 hours.
All 18 hours, baby, pure and uncut.
Remarkable.
And we've got a number of guests lined up. I think we talked about this on some earlier podcasts, but we've got it sort of cemented down now. We're going to have some mighty fine sort of cherry pie and hopefully coffee as well.
Damn fine cherry pie.
Yeah, damn fine. From the... Camerino Bakery. Fine bakery, Cable Street.
One of the very best bakeries in the city.
Greatest cakes, so get there if
Gorgeous.
you haven't been there. So good.
And we also have a number of guests coming in. So we got talked about this before. We have Brian Lloyd and Jen Gannon discussing whether or not it's a film or TV show. We have Donald Clark coming in to talk about how it fits in the world of David Lynch. We have Richard Drum from Quantum of Friendship and Film Editor at Head Stuff, who'll be talking a little bit about nostalgia as it exists there. We have our own Phil Bagnall, who'll be coming in for 3 hours, hopefully with Jay.
Yeah, I'll be around for at least some of that.
Who'll see us up to midnight if we're very, very lucky.
And we will talk about the 8 episode,
covering the
essential
Jay After Dark.
Yeah, this
Finally.
is
Highly recommended.
pure and uncut, ladies and gentlemen.
Lads.
Quite literally.
We're going to be sued.
But yeah, no, it's absolutely great.
No, it's great. I really, really look forward to it.
It's completely insane. It may go horribly wrong, but you can listen live and see as it does, or doesn't. But it is we'll be listening on Mixlr.
I was going to ask, where do we find this, Darren?
Okay, so if you want to listen live, you can listen to us on Mixlr. We'll be tweeting out the link as part of the 250 sort of Twitter account.
What the hell is Mixlr? I'm old.
Oh,
Spell
Mixlr. MIXLR.com.
I knew there was a
missing
vowel that kids
no, of course there's. Drop vowel. Who has time for vowels these days?
I don't.
And it's /the-250. But you can also just Google us. You can follow our Twitter account where we'll be tweeting that out.
And I'll be throwing stuff out as well. I'm sure Ronan will be as well.
And we'll also be hopefully live and notating as we go. So if you like Twin Peaks, follow the account. We'll be sending out sort of links to weird 8-bit video games where you play Escape from the Black Lodge, but also things like interviews, videos, and sort of footage.
Plus, you'll get to hear Darren eat cherry pie in real
live
time.
on air.
It's like, I mean, if that's not a reason.
Welcome to the 21st century. This is what media exists for. But also, primarily as well, we are raising money for the Irish Cancer Society as well. The money goes directly there. So if you want to support us, you can also donate via justgive.com / I believe it's the 250 live. But again, follow us on Twitter, and we'll be tweeting that out as well. We've already raised over €500 for it, which is
Great.
Amazing. Thank you for everybody for your time and generosity. All right, take it easy. We'll be back next week, assuming that I haven't keeled over from a cherry pie overdose.
But we'll be back next week if he has keeled over.
The special R.I.P. Darren episode.
Everybody will have watched Cloud Atlas.
I will have watched Baby Driver 13 times in his honour.
What I learned from my 11th viewing of Baby Driver by Jay Coyle. Under the Silver Lake is on Mubi. Ronan may watch it before it expires.
Tune in 4 weeks' time.
Take it easy, guys. Bye.
See ya.